We are continuing our study in the book of Genesis, chapter 19. We're dealing with Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah with the two angels. So when we concluded Genesis chapter 18, it ended with the Lord and two men, which were angels, coming to visit Abraham and Sarah to both confirm the covenant that Sarah was going to have a son, 1 year from today, from the day that the Lord was meeting with Abraham. And then they were having this fellowship meal as well. And then it was revealed to Abraham that Abraham was uh, a man, a friend of God. The Lord actually described him as this is a man, Abraham, that I know him. He is a man that will command or teach his family, teach them to do justice and to know judgment. As well, he will command his household after him to follow after him. So that's the one thing that the Lord says, like he knows about Abraham. And it says that because he will teach his family and teach them justice and judgment and teach them to follow after him, that will be the reason why the blessings will come upon him. And so, of course, there are many aspects of the importance of the head of the household, the man of the home, being the spiritual leader. The blessings that is given to a family comes upon the family as the head of the home teaches the family the ways of God, teaches them the justice of God, and as an example for them, and teaches in a way that instills within them that it is carried from generation to generation. Right? It carries from multiple generations. And because of that, through that, the blessings that God had promised Abraham would come upon him because of his dedication to that. Right. And then Abraham begins to intercede for Lot because the Lord said he was going to go down and see the outcry that he's heard. He's going to go and see if things that are going on there are true. The scriptures are already had spoken of Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities round about that they were exceedingly great wicked, right? So not just wicked, but exceedingly great wickedness. That's how they described the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. So now we're seeing that they're coming to their end point. So let's begin with Genesis chapter 19, verse 1. And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. So here we see it's a similar example of what we saw when the Lord and the two angels came to meet Abraham. Abraham immediately, when he saw them, he also ran to meet them, and he extended great hospitality as well. And we're seeing the same kind of example with Lot as well. It says and there came two angels. We know angels also means messengers. These are divine messengers from God, right? Why are there two? Because the scripture has this principle that the testimony by the witnesses of two establishes a thing. And so here you have the two angels coming as a witness to establish the truth of this thing, that what God's going to do, that it is real. And these two witnesses came to also rescue Lot as well and his family, right? One of the differences that I see compared to Abraham in Genesis chapter 18, it described the Lord and the two angels that were with him, it described them as men, right? But it talked about Abraham, he lifted up his eyes and he was able to see spiritually that these were not just men, that these were divine beings or individuals that were sent from God. But here in Genesis chapter 19, it presents it a little different. It doesn't present them as starting as men, and then we come to understand that these are angels and the Lord, right? It starts out presenting themselves to Lot as two angels. So he knew that there were two angels that were coming. Then we're going to begin to see then that the men are not going to perceive them as angels. The men are going to perceive them as men. So we're seeing like this play a little different. So they're being seen as angels, but by Lot, but the men of the city are going to see them as being men, right? So we see that there's a reason why they're seeing them as men, and that's the focus from when they see them as men. But Lot sees them spiritually as angels. That's how they're presented to him. And it says here that the angels came to Sodom at even. right? And this is important that they're coming at even. We know what even means. Symbolically, even is that transition from day to night, right? It's that time where the sun sets and darkness begins to fall. And so this is what is setting the stage of what Sodom is about. It's setting the stage of also the time or the, what do I want to say, like uh, the what? The dark hour, or like the stage of their of the city's endpoint, or they've come to the fullness of their wickedness. What I'm trying to say, like they've come to the fullness of their iniquity, right? The even time. So they're coming to them at the even time, at the fullness of their iniquity, right? And so it's setting this stage. Whereas that they're not coming in the morning, and symbolic of the day, of those things that are good, but it's revealing that this is their endpoint. They've come to the fullness of their wickedness, and it's being made manifest, and they're coming to see it, right? Because that's what they're about. So it's coming in when darkness is beginning to fall. And also the eventide represents is symbolic of judgment, also symbolic of deliverance as well, because judgment is coming. On one part it comes judgment, and on the other part comes deliverance for those that are righteous. And so deliverance part is like a cleansing part. When you would look in the book of Leviticus, when it would talk about cleansings, especially things like if you're like touch a leper or something like that, the cleansing would take place. They would tell them at evening time, at the twilight, or at the sunset, right? Because that also represents a time of deliverance. But at the same time, darkness and sunset also is symbolic of judgment coming as well. When you look at the Passover takes place at evening. But then at the same time of the Passover, some are going to undergo judgment. We're talking about in the time of Moses, right? And then when that judgment comes in the evening, there's going to be the firstborn that's going to be killed, right? And at the same time, Israel is going to be delivered, right? So that's the duality we talk about evening. It's the time of judgment and it's the time of deliverance. The Jewish sacrifice occurs, one of the sacrifices occurs at the time of the evening. There always this evening sacrifice as well. Right. So there's this kind of this play here that's kind of going on here, right? But anyway, it says there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And this is kind of interesting because when we first hear about Lot making his choice he lifts up his eyes, it says, speaking of Lot, and he looks at the plains of Jordan. He sees it being a fertile land, a blessed land, or whatever, and he sees the bounty that is in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, and he pitches his tent there. And then the next thing we hear about him is that he's actually now in the city of Sodom, and he ends up being taken by the four kings that come to battle the five kings that were in Jordan, right? And then now we see, next time we see Lot, now he's sitting at the gate, right? And the gate represents the place of like prominence, a place of influence, a place of authority. You know, as he sits as an elder that rules over and judges over those that enter the city or have questions or things like that. So we see he has this place of prominence and position, influence, and authority in the city. So we see Lot, you know, actually just continuing and getting deeper and deeper into Sodom, or getting tied into it even more and more, even after he was snatched up. And Abraham had to come and rescue him. He's still even deeper in this place. But we see that this is his place there. Right. And while he's at the gate there, the scripture says here that, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them. So he's watching and looking and observing people and judging people that come into the city. That's kind of like his role there. He's like the judge there, one of the judges that sits there to evaluate those that are coming into the city. And he's waiting and he's looking and he sees these two angels come. When they come, he rises up and he meets them, right? It speaks of that. And so, and he does the proper response of what you should do when you see two messengers sent of God coming into the city, and he recognizes that these are divine beings, angels sent from God. He has his proper response of the scripture says he meets them, right? He bows himself with his face toward the ground. So he recognizes these are sent from God. All right, so that's his response. There's another response that we're going to see from those that don't see them as angels. They see them as, they call them two men, And their response is going to be the nature of what it goes on in Sodom and Gomorrah, is that they want to defile these men, right? So one sees them as being divine angels, the other sees them as just being men, and they don't want to have fellowship with them in the spiritual way. They want to have fellowship with them in a impure um, sexual way to defile. They want to defile them, right? And so that's what we're going to see here. The differences, and I think that's why they start out with Lot seeing them as two angels, and then the men, the city, see them as being men. And like they don't even see the, even if they did, maybe they did see them as being spiritual, but all they see is just they look like men, right? And so being filled with their perversion and their lust, perverse lust, they're reacting out of their um, uh, wicked nature, right? So verse 2 goes on and says, and he said, behold, now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet. And you shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, nay, but we will abide in the street all night. So we see a similar response of what Abraham did, this hospitality, right? This servitude. And so he tells these two angels, he says, he calls them my lords, not just recognizing where they're from and whom they serve and the authority and the power that they have, right? So he begs them, he says, come to your servant's house. So he identifies himself as a servant of the Lord, right? And all those that serve the Lord, his common kinship and bond he has with them. He tells them to tarry all night long with him. So he's telling them, you need to stay all night here with me. He says, tarry all night long with me. And there's a reason why he's telling them to stay all night with me. He understands that. And then he extends his hospitality. He says, wash your feet. Same thing that Abraham did. So, of course, this is culture as well, right? And then he says, then you shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, nay, we will abide in the street all night, right? And so verse 3 says that he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him and entered into his house, and he made them a feast and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. All right, so when they said that they want to abide in the street all night, and he told them, no, tarry all night in my house, right? They said the complete contrary to what Lot is saying. No, no, you need to come in my house and stay here all night, right? And they said, no, 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 we'll abide in the street. All right, so they're kind of testing Lot as well, but they were there also to see the things that were going on. Although they already knew what's going on, but they were there to be a witness, right, to declare the righteousness of God and the judgment of God, that what was going to take place was true, right, and true. Right. But so when it says verse 3, he pressed upon them greatly. So to press is already something that's very serious, very grave. When you're pressing someone, that's very serious enough. But he says he pressed upon them greatly. That means like he compelled them, he begged them, he warned them, he was like dragging them, like telling them, no, you must do this, very serious about saying, no, this is not a thing that you want to do. Right? It wasn't like this casual thing. No, stay. No, I got plenty of room, plenty of food. No, come. No, it says when he pressed upon them greatly, that's because he was really warning them and begging them and compelling them, right? Because he was not in agreement with the wicked deeds that were going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. So he wanted to try to keep them also from being involved in that wickedness or being stained and perverted by the wickedness of that city, right? And so, because of the state of their exceeding great wickedness, meant that they couldn't be out all night like that, right? But it says that they end up turning, the angels turned in unto him, and they entered into his house. So his house represented his hospitality. It was a place of sanctuary that he was offering them, a place of safety, and it was also a place for God's influence. So he's a place where he would influence them for God, or would influence people for God. That's how he was offering up his place, a place of safety, um, where they could have fellowship, will be a place where they can abide with God and things like that. And that's why it says here that when they entered into the house, he made them a feast. Right. It's the same thing that we saw with Abraham. He went and he took a goat, and he had this young man prepare that, and he had Sarah go ahead and prepare food as well, and hurry up and make some small cakes and things like that were unleavened as well. Right, so he made this feast, right, and he also baked unleavened bread. So here again we see even more detail, which I don't think was mentioned in with Abraham, that it was unleavened bread, but we understood that that's what it was. But what it also did say about Abraham, that it says he chose the finest flour to be prepared, right? And so we talked about the importance of that. There were no chaff or anything like that. He got the finest, the best flour that could be used to make this unleavened bread, the choicest, the most perfect, right? And we know this is symbolic, representing, Christ and things like that, right? And it was unleavened, representing that without sin. It says, and they did eat. So they all ate together, right? Well, this is suggesting that I'm suggesting that maybe they all ate Lot and these men ate. The difference with Abraham is that Abraham prepared this, and in humility and servitude, he allowed them, the Lord and the angels, to eat, and he did not eat. He, him, and Sarah. But it doesn't suggest that here that the angels ate and then Lot just sat and served them. It suggests that it says they did eat. So maybe it's all of them, but he invited them in. He invited them all in together into their home. Um, but this shows us what is necessary, right, to remain righteous and to overcome the iniquity that Sodom had. The importance that Lot's fellowship of the bread that he ate, it was unleavened bread, and that's what's needed to overcome the darkness or to overcome the sin and iniquity. You always need to continue to partake of the unleavened bread, which represents Christ, right? And as they were partaking, him and the angels were eating this unleavened bread and this feast and things like that, and they were being washed and cleansed. This represents the believer's communion, right? Of a communion in the work of Christ to sustain them without sin. That they eat of this bread, eat this communion bread, have this feast, be washed and cleansed, and come inside the house and into this place. There's a place of sanctuary that happens. And if you abide in this place, and you partake of this fellowship with those that also have the same like belief and worship of the Most High God, right? It's what keeps you in the midst of all the iniquity that's going on. And that's what's going on here that we see taking place. They're eating this unleavened bread. So that's very important that we must take of Christ, the unleavened bread, that communion fellowship. That's what keeps us from the iniquity and keeps us righteous, right? Our righteousness is our partake of the body of Christ. Right, so this speaks of his righteous fellowship of worshipers of the Most High God. He's having this fellowship, right, with those that are followers of the Most High God, him and the angels. Verse 4 says, but before they lay down, that is the angels, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, right? Both old and young, all the people from every quarter, right? And we've talked about, it's not the first time I've talked about this. When we were in the book of Jude, we went into looking at the spirit and nature of the spirit of homosexuality and all types of sexual perversion. We looked at that last time when we were in the book of Jude. And so we kind of briefly kind of recap that again. But one of the things that we see, it says before they lay down. So there was this culture of routine and expected wickedness and defilement that everybody at a certain time they would get together at an evening or nighttime, and before you even go to bed, that they would all participate in this kind of sexual perversion, the men of the city, and it was so much that they compassed the house roundabout. And we talked about what this is speaking of, that the spirit of homosexuality really tries to force itself. It has puts a demand. It tries to entrap you. That's what the spirit of homosexuality is trying to do in the world today. It's trying to encircle you, entrap you, and try to force its demands upon you to participate in it. And we see that it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Listening to a executive, my wife and I are talking about this sometimes as well, that there is no show nowadays that gets a green light unless it has homosexuality in it, some kind of lesbianism or some kind of perversion like that in it. Like the shows are not green lit unless they have that in them anymore. One of the things I was looking at, we used to watch these. They used to have a show um, on like the home channels where they just buy and sell homes. It's like Chip and Joanna. They have this new show that has come out. They living out. They take these people out into the I say like Montana or something like that. I can't remember where it is. Some of you guys may know about this show, whatever. And they have these 3 families, 4 families, 5 families come out, and they have to live like how you used to live back in the days of the pioneer Western frontier. And one of them, the families that they have there, is a gay couple. And people were kind of like questioning, like, why would they have the gay couple? They're supposed to be Christian, and they've kind of separated. They have their own broadcasting company and stuff like that or whatever. But but then they've come out and said that they are in agreement with homosexuality and the stuff like that, and love is love and all kinds of things. And people were, went back and started looking at their text messaging and instant messaging and stuff like that, and they had all kind of support for homosexuality and gay stuff, whatever. And but that's just the way it is today. Like if you're going to be in this world, there's a system that's being spirit of homosexuality, of iniquity, that is trying to force people, that's trying to encircle them round about, and demand them and entrap them to make them both participate, be in agreement with, and to come to and get involved in you both what they call it, those that both do iniquity, and then there are also those that love those that do iniquity and support them. And so we see it all part of the same thing that's going on here. And so people are succumbing to it every day, right? And that's what we see here. It says they compass the house roundabout. So they were intent on not letting these men out. And they were going to encircle them and try to force them to participate in this. And that's what the world is trying to do to believers today. And to everyone that's in the world, they account and compass them roundabout on every side, press in and push into them to try to defile them, make them think there's no way of escape. But we know there is a way of escape for the believer, which we're going to see. So we always have to understand that God is providing a way for us to escape, and He will send His support and help of us to make sure that we do escape as we're being pressed in on every side. And we know this is also an example of the rapture that Lot is an example of, type of example of before judgment, God, he his people, the righteous one, escape out of it. And so we can expect that, as Lot was, that in the last days in our lives, there's going to be this encampment pressing all around us as well, the darkness to try to press in on us and overcome us as well. But the Lord is going to deliver us, that generation that's going to be present, right? It says both old and young, all the people from every corner. So this every aspect. So we see the spirit of homosexuality again. It wants to infect every aspect of everything and everyone in a city or dwelling or nation, right? It's like an infectious disease that is just trying to be spread. And trap everyone of every quarter. So they don't want anything to be left out. And every city wants to be involved at every level of government, every level of entertainment, every level of politics, every level, even in churches, right? There is to be no aspect of the spirit of iniquity, the spirit of homosexuality and lesbianism and all this kind of perversion. It wants to involve every aspect of your life, a city, a nation, a country, whatever it is. It wants to involve it all. And it says it's both young and old, right? So it's talking about, it doesn't matter. They want to get them at age 3. They're trying to get them now before when they're even born. They don't want them to not even have genders or anything like that. That's how, the nature of what the spirit is that it wants to get them before they even have a name, right? Just when they come out of the womb, they're just like, trying to capture them and say, don't even give genders to them. Just leave them open for perversion, right? And people are succumbing to that and giving into these things, both old and young. So it doesn't matter how old you are. They want everybody who's been in a long time, or try to get those who are just coming in to be involved in it. Right, but all the people from every quarter. So the spirit of iniquity, homosexuality, desires to defile all men. And that's one aspect of the spirit of homosexuality. It desires to entrap all men, every man that is born, the spirit of homosexuality, because the male is very important to the purpose and the plan of God, right? Which is a separate topic as well, but it's very important. What the male represents, both in the home and community and society, and God's purpose and plan, how He operates, right? And so the spirit of iniquity of homosexuality wants to defile all men, every man. He wants to try to defile. And my wife and I, as we go out and travel a lot and we look around a lot, everybody's carrying these man purses, And I was telling my wife, when I was in college, man purses were just being introduced on the scene as a routine thing at the college level. And these guys were saying, oh, it's the new man. And we're having these man purses. And, myself and my other boys, we were just like, oh, that is so gay or whatever. And then nobody was wearing it. But this, some of these gay guys are like, well, this is the way of the future. We're like, nobody will ever wear those man purses, whatever. And they look like purses. And then as Rachel and I were just traveling or whatever, all over everywhere. It doesn't matter if it was in a Muslim country that we were in or Western countries in Europe and even across America. All these men are wearing man purses, Gucci man purses, Louis Vuitton man purses or whatever. Just all these man purses. We're like, oh my goodness. So we see that are just attacking all men. Now I'm seeing men wear bonnets and stuff like that. I'm just like, they just black men, whatever, like, wearing bonnets and stuff like that. I mean, so does we see and all these tight skinny jeans and all these kind of stuff, feminizing men or whatever. That's all aspects and elements we know of the whole spirit of homosexuality that's trying to enclose and entrap, surround, and compass, right, men, um, to lure them and lead them into this defilement of iniquity. But it's a slow process that many can't even see what's going on, right? Verse 5, it says, and they called unto Lot and said unto him, where are the men which came into thee this night? Bring them out unto us that we may know them, right? So here they are, they encompass and entrapped, right? Not allowing them to try to escape. So they don't want you to escape. They want no escape. They're going to make this happen. That's the spirit of this homosexuality, which is going to be what it's going to be in the last days, right? We're leading up to it, but that's where it's headed, right? Where no one is meant to escape this, right? And if you're not part of it, they're going to call you out, find you. If they see you, they're going to call you out, right? So they're calling unto Lot, and they're calling out for these men, saying, where are these men? So they're seeking these men, right, that came into thee this night, bring them out. So they expect Lot to deliver them. And that's what they expect. They expect that if you know someone who is not that way, homosexual, they expect you, they want it to be exposed, and they want you to be delivered to them to participate in it. So if they find that you're not part of it, oh, they're coming after you, and they're gonna try to lure you into it or make you be a part of the agreement with it, right? It says, bring them out unto us, right? So they have no respect for Lot's righteous lifestyle, right? They're trying to demand this of Lot for him to yield to it, to surrender to it. They have no respect for Lot's home, right? We used to say what a man does in his own home, that's his right, that's his. But no, the spirit of homosexuality and lesbian is like, no, if you teach anything other than homosexuality, if you stand against it, we're going to come into your home. And that's what's happening now. If I had a son or a daughter who said, oh, I want to undergo gender transformation or whatever, and I say no, they will come into my home and take the child out, and allow the child to do whatever they want to do. So we see the same nature of the spirit, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. They're going to they're teaching in the schools, and trying to override the values and principles that the righteous may have in their homes, but they have no respect for that, no respect for the righteous way of life, no respect for the sanctity of a righteous man's home anymore. Basically, it's a spirit of confrontation, mob rule to overcome by overwhelming force, overwhelming presence, overwhelming like a flood that's just coming in. And so we see that today, like there's just this confrontational mob rule of everything, in every way. And it's the same thing with the homosexual spirit of iniquity that is pressing, right? It's trying to just overwhelm you, to make you think that they have power, right? And they can't be resisted against you. So you have to surrender to it. And also, they're very forceful, very bossy, very controlling, very militant. That's what we're looking at here. There's a militant nature to this spirit as well. And they're going to take you by force, right, and overcome you, right? And it says here that we may know them, Genesis chapter 19, verse 5. And they called out to Lot and said unto him, where are the men which came into this night? Bring them out unto us that we may know them. Now, notice this is that we may know them. I'm like, now these are men from every quarter, both young and old. They all want to know him. And this know him we know is speaking of in an intimate way, in a sexual perverse way. They want to know them. All of them want to know them. That's just the extent of the perversion, that they all want to defile these men, right? Not just one or two of them. All of them want to have their way. And that's just the dastardly level of perversion. That's how extensive it is. And that's what's going on in the world today. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. They just want just open, just no bars, no hold. They want just to file everyone over and over and over and over again, right? I'll probably just end with just Second Peter verse 2, 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 1 and 6 through 9 before I kind of wrap up here. The question is that how did Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities get to this place? And the apostle Peter, he kind of gave insight. He said that there were, verse 1, it says, but there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you who privily bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. So in order for Sodom and Gomorrah to get the way they were, there had to be false prophets or teachers that came in among them. And these false prophets and teachers that we know that they were those that brought in idolatry. And with idolatry and the worship of gods that we were just looking at here, we know Greece was homosexual, right? All those naked men that they have, they worship men and their bodies, stuff like that. We know that Jordan that we were in, with all this idolatry and the priests and the false prophets that they taught people to worship these gods, and they turned them away from the creator of heaven and earth, right? They brought in these damnable heresies, and these damnable heresies just basically lured them away from, as it says here, damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. So any doctrine that is brought in, or that's a heresy, that denies the Lord, or doesn't point people to the Lord, or teaches them other things about the Lord, or other things about other gods, or points them to other gods, is called a damnable heresy. And if it turns you away from the worship of the true and living God, of seeking God, seeking Christ, right? That's called a damnable heresy. And idolatry is a damnable heresy because it points you away from God. And then it allows then homosexual spirit then to come in. And that's what Apostle Peter says in chapter 2, verse 6. He says, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemn them with an overthrow, making them an example unto those that should after live ungodly. So when heresies come in, it then also brings in turning the cities, it turns them into places, it leads to the endpoint of these general heresies that cause you to deny the Lord. It also then turns people into homosexual, the homosexual spirit, that it leads them into that as well. That's where it's turning them to, right? And so that's why it says, first came the false prophets and the teachers teaching damnable heresies, and the heresies led them away from serving God, worshiping God. And what it ended up then turning them, that city of Sodom and Gomorrah, ended up being turned into a place of known as homosexuality and Gomorrah, right? And causing them to live an ungodly life. And the purpose of that, right, that the Spirit is doing, bringing these heresies, is that the end point of that is to bring them to a place of condemnation. And so that's what the spirit of homosexuality, or these heresies that, or idolatry that we've just looking at in the places we've been in Athens and in Jordan. The purpose of the heresies that cause them, these false prophets, is to cause them to turn away from God, and then to entrap them into homosexuality so that they can be condemned not to be able to be received by God. The whole point is to get into a place of condemnation, to be ungodly, so that they cannot receive Christ and end up bringing total destruction upon themselves, so they can't be saved. And so that's what's going on in the world today, is to lead people to a place of condemnation where they cannot, they get so far, of course, that it's the only thing that God can do is just destroy them, right? I'll just pause right there because my time is up. We'll continue this, Lord willing, tomorrow. Any comments or questions?